And we're live, just as the great Sean Sheen joins us in perfect timing here for the UFC pre-show of the year. My name is Ian O'Neill. Today I'm joined by the usual suspects, Sean Sheen, Harry Powell, Sean Denny, and a very special guest, 2021 Commentator of the Year, the most prestigious prize in all of MMA, Brad Quarton, the voice of Cage Warriors. How are we all doing tonight, lads?
Daniel Cormier was fucking robbed. Robbed.
He was robbed. It's been a couple of weeks now since we've had some UFC. I woke up this morning. I was feeling positive about this card. I've since wrote the preview, since did some research. Not all that promised about this card. Now, it's not the best. We're going to get into it, but first, let me tell you about our sponsors, EatAllReal.com. The Eat All Real nutrition bars, the best nutrition bars that you can get in the market. Irish owned, Irish made. Our good friend Niall Harty's doing some killer work right there. You know, I signed up, got my box as well. I got it here. It's packed full of delicious bars. Orange flavor bars, coconut flavor bars, peanut butter bars. They've got it all. If you head over there to eatallreal.com, put in the code SevereMMA, get yourself 15% off. Support Irish products, support the SevereMMA, and after that, let's get going. Right, guys, we're off for the first card of the year. Pretty good main event. Handful of fights that I'm looking forward to seeing on this card, but I guess overall not a great card. Does anybody have anything positive to say about the card overall? I think it's probably beneficial that this is the first card of the year, that we might be chomping at the bit to see some fights maybe, but I think at least we can say the main event is going to be an interesting contest. I'm just wondering, we'll go to our special guest first, Brad. What do you think about the main event? Are you excited for this fight? How do you see it going down?
Well, yeah, I am excited for this fight, but I'd just like to respond to Sean first. Daniel Cormier may be feeling that he was robbed on the Commentator of the Year award, but I don't think he knew the criteria. So,
Go on! Yo! Go on!
I'm just kidding. It's just joke. No, look, it's listen, it's not a great card, is it? But it's got a great main event, and I think that's kind of descriptive of a lot of the UFC content at the moment. You know, we're in the content age where quantity is much more important than quality. They've got a quota they have to fill for ESPN. That's not necessarily a bad thing, because it means there's a lot of guys getting into the UFC right now and earning UFC money who may have been earning a couple of grand on the regional scene. So it's a good thing in that respect, that the barrier to entry is getting a little bit lower, and we've got more guys earning money getting that exposure. It means a lot of the events are a bit more skippable now, but you know, such is life. When you have an event every weekend, you can afford to skip one every now and again. And look, we've got a sick card coming up the weekend after, but you know, there's some fun stuff going on this card, and the main event is probably the most fun fight of the entire evening. You know, Calvin Kattar has never been in a boring fight in his life. Giga Chikadze is a very exciting fighter. They've got two styles which match up and clash very, very well, and it's going to be a very intriguing one to see how it plays out. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, indeed. You know, I watched back a couple of fights before recording tonight. I watched back against Calvin Kattar's last fight against Max Holloway. And one thing that I kind of figured from that fight was, and I think we've talked about it time and time again, that at the top level of this sport, the ability to be able to switch things up in a fight if things aren't going your way. I know myself and Sean have talked about Jose Aldo and his ability to do that in the past. I think that's something that caught out Calvin Kattar in that fight, is that he didn't really have an answer for the quickness of Max Holloway and the speed of his boxing. And just like, do you think that is something he's going to have to change? And we'll go to Sean Sheen first. I mean, like, the ability to be able to switch it up, Sean, mid-fight if things aren't going your way is really a necessity in the fight game these days.
Yeah, it really is. For this fight, though, it's an odd fight, because I was listening back to a podcast I think myself and Harry did the other day, and we were talking about Aldo and Volkanovski, and the fact that Aldo in that, who did he fight there recently? Rob Font. Rob Font was really beating him badly for the first 3 minutes of the fight. And when you're getting really beat badly, you kind of have to change something. Whereas in the Volkanovski fight, he was just getting beaten a little bit, but for the whole fight, and it didn't force him to change anything. It's almost better for you to be getting beaten by a lot, and it forces you to change. To be in a fight, losing a fight, but not losing enough, to make a big change. And I think that is something that is actually, you make a great point about the Holloway fight. I actually think it's something that could have been more evident of a change in the Holloway fight, but everything he tried to change, I haven't seen that fight in a while now, but from memory, everything he tried to change in that fight didn't really come off from him. I think this fight will actually be tougher to change in, because Chikadze is more of a one-paced fighter, and I don't mean that in a bad way at all. I actually mean it in a very good way. I think the way he throws his shots, the way he lands those power shots when he needs to land those power shots is absolutely fantastic. I have the world of respect for him. So I think your point is right, and I think he will need to change in the middle of the fight, but I actually think it's less likely this time than in the Holloway fight.
Yeah, we haven't seen him since that fight. That fight was almost a year to the day when this fight is going to be going on this Saturday. One other thing that would worry me about Kattar in this fight is how often that Max Holloway hurt him to the body and connected with shots to the body. And we all know how dangerous Chikadze is to the body with his kicks and stuff like that. Isn't that, I talk with Harry Powell next. We'll just, how do you think that he's gonna have to combat that some way, Harry? He can't afford really to let those body strikes get off, because it's either going to slow him down or it's going to finish him altogether. How do you think he might kind of try and combat that in this fight?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. The answer is range, right? It's range finding, and it's forcing Giga to fight on the back foot. Now, the problem you have is Giga Chikadze is a man that's able to land that body kick almost at will, and going forwards and going backwards, right? So Calvin Kattar has to know that body kick is coming, and it's going to come often. It's going to come when Calvin's on his off steps. It's going to come when Calvin's circling. It's going to come on the end of combinations, in the middle of combinations, and to begin combinations. So I think for Calvin Kattar, the most important thing is being first and last, right? If you can be first and last in your exchanges, you can force Giga Chikadze to choose his combinations a little bit more wisely. I'd also think we're going to have to mix in some form of grappling here. We're going to have to mix in some form of ability to force Giga to think about that body kick, whether that's trying to catch the kick and take it down, whether that's trying to use it to get into clinch situations or something similar. But Calvin Kattar in his last fight showed a tendency to be overwhelmed by guys that were able to pick shots with accuracy and pick shots with power. I mean, that's the definition of Giga Chikadze, right? So it's a tough fight for Calvin Kattar. And the last thing I'll say, just before I throw it back, is you mentioned that it's almost a year since the Max Holloway fight. That's not enough fucking time. For the amount of damage that he took in that fight, a year is not enough fucking time. And to be put into a 5-round main event against somebody that hits like Giga Chikadze does, this is a tough fight.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100%, Harry, there, and let's talk about Chikadze for a second. We've been talking about his strengths. Let's maybe talk about his weaknesses for a second. Last time he tasted defeat was against Austin Hubbard in the Contender Series, fight where he was taken down, a fight where he was out-grappled. Brad, I'm just wondering, do you think that that's a route maybe that Calvin Kattar should go down into this fight? We're talking about him changing it up. Is Chikadze going to be expecting Kattar to come in and just to try outbox him? Do you think it would be a good idea maybe for Kattar to try and make things dirty in the grappling department, or try and make Chikadze kind of work on the ground or get him down onto the ground?
Well, one thing I've really noticed about Calvin Kattar, especially looking back at the Dan Ige fight, is what he's really good at is getting that initial takedown and then standing above his guy in the butt scoop position and throwing ground and pound from there. He's got really long arms and he's really accurate with his shots. So his ground and pound from that standing position is really good. So he doesn't necessarily have to get the takedown and establish side control or get into mount. He can maybe get a takedown and just punch from behind the legs of Giga Chikadze. Chikadze's ground game is not, world beating. So I don't think he's going to be particularly worried about essentially getting sucked into the guard of Chikadze. But if you can take his man down, land some shots from the top, I think that's going to be potentially a route to victory for Calvin Kattar in this one. And, something I'll say about Chikadze as well is that it's a blessing and a curse. A lot of what he does is very, very basic. He stands in the southpaw stance and he throws that left kick to the body. He doesn't have to do the switch step there, so there's nothing to set up. But those basic strikes can be countered after a while. And I think Calvin Kattar is a guy whose striking acumen is at a level where he will be able to figure that out if we get into the second, third, fourth, and fifth round, if it gets that far. And maybe one of the key questions for me in this fight is, will it get that far? Because that fight you had against Max Holloway, that's the kind of fight that takes years off your career. We talk about guys getting their chins deteriorated. That's the kind of fight that does it. So he's taking a year off, which is great. It's the absolute minimum, as Harry said, that he should be taking off. But is it enough? We're going to see. And I think if Giga can land a shot on his chin, that's going to answer a lot of questions for us.
100%. Sean Denny, how do you see this fight playing out overall?
Overall, I'm afraid Calvin's toughness is going to be too much for him. I think he's going to stand for way too long. He doesn't really get he gets hurt a lot, but he doesn't go down. It doesn't end the fight. So I'd be worried about sort of him getting nailed with body shots with Giga. I think, like as Brad said, you need to try and take him down. Like he is from the Caucasus area, so they are very used to wrestling around there. So a part-timer isn't going to be able to come in and dominate Giga on the ground. But you can make it messy, as Brad said. You can get the first takedown. You can land a bit of ground and pound. You can put Giga out of his rhythm, which is his key to victory there, I think.
Yeah, 100%. Like I think we're probably all unanimously in agreement that we probably all fancy Chikadze in this fight. Would you think he's going to get the job done, Sean?
Yeah, I do. I think he will. I was actually kind of just doing the betting show there earlier on today, and it's funny because you look at a lad like Calvin Kattar and he went 5 hard rounds with Max Holloway, as Sean Denny alluded to there, and I think a few of the people here are kind of alluding to the fact that they're probably picking him to win inside the distance, and that's what I'm doing too. And it's a weird thing to say, but I think it's funny. A fight like that against Max Holloway proves that you have an unbelievable chin and you're very hard to finish. But it also proves that maybe there's a few miles taken off that tank. A Ford Cortina can only do 250,000 miles. And if you get very close to there, there's more fucking likelihood that it's going to break down. And if you look, I don't have Kattar's record. Hold on, I actually do have it up in front of me. Let me pull it up here. He's 27 fights. That's a lot of fights. He's been around for a long, long time. It looks like his gym is one of those gyms as well where they don't take it too lightly on each other, which, again, is a benefit in fights like the Max Holloway fight. But long term, if you're one of those guys who doesn't get to the top immediately and has to go back down and back up and back down and back up, there's a reason why that doesn't happen very often. There's a reason why there's only a few people like a Bisping or like a Charles Oliveira or others like that, because there's you only get to ride so many times in MMA, and I feel like for Calvin Kattar it might be it might be a little bit tough, especially against a guy like everyone's kind of alluded to here, the power, the accuracy of Chikadze. I think Brad made a good point though as well, that if he can figure him out a little bit, if he's well tuned, if Chikadze is predictable in the fight as maybe he is before the fight in the preparation, maybe it is something Kattar. I hadn't thought of that, but I think it is a good point that Brad made there. But yeah, I'm picking Chikadze, and I think I actually think he'll do it earlier than maybe to give time for Kattar to kind of turn around. So I think the first Harry Kearns, I see in the chat there, said third round TKO KO. I wouldn't be too far away from that myself, I think.
Yeah,
I think sorry, Ian, just to interrupt there. I think, one of the things about Giga Chikadze that has to be mentioned is you look at the early half of his career, and there's no polite way of saying it. The guy was a can crusher, right? He was fighting on those, I don't remember the name, Gladiator Challenge, I think it was. And he was fighting bums pretty much, for the first 10 fights of his career. And there's two ways of thinking about that. It's something we deal with a lot over in this part of the world and in the regional scene. There's two ways of thinking. Either you're just building your confidence by constantly smashing guys and constantly getting that confidence boost of having the crowd cheering you and getting those highlight reel knockouts. And then by the time you get to the big show, you're absolutely brimming with confidence, brimming with self-belief, and you know what you're capable of doing. The other way of looking at it is you're not prepared for the highest level guys. And if you look at Giga Chikadze's entrance into the UFC in his first few fights, they all went the distance. He wasn't knocking guys out anymore. Now, he's got back to that recently. He's got back to stopping guys. But against a guy like Calvin Kattar, is he going to be stopping a guy like Calvin Kattar? That's an interesting question for me. And Calvin Kattar is a guy who's not gone that same route. He's been taking harder fights for a lot longer. Outside of his MMA career, he's got a full contact taekwondo background. Obviously, we know Giga's got a big kickboxing background as well. So 2 seasoned guys. But I'm picking Giga, but I just think it's not going to be as easy as you might think, because I just think Calvin Kattar is going to be a little bit tougher and a little bit wiser than a lot of the opponents that Giga Chikadze has had. So it's going to be interesting to see how he figures it out. I think he will, and I'm looking forward to seeing him do it.
100%. I think, like, for me, any doubts that I would have had with him on the feet were kind of erased when I seen him going in there against Edson Barbosa and going toe-to-toe with Barbosa and breaking Barbosa and getting him out of there. Showed a great killer instinct in that fight. Something that worries me for Calvin Kattar in this fight is the fact that he carries a high guard often. He got hit a lot to the body, and I think if he doesn't get taken out to the body, I feel that the body shots will slowly make his hands kind of droop a little bit and fall a little bit, and it'll be harder to keep that high guard, and that will open up some of the powerful shots that Giga Chikadze has in his hands as well. I mean, I can see Chikadze getting him out of there maybe round 3, round 4. Would you agree with that, Harry Powell? Do you think that Kattar can get the job done? Do you see him getting finished before the fight is over? What's your overall consensus on the fight?
My honest answer is I really don't know. I hope I picked the right mic now, by the way. Fantastic. The honest answer is I don't know. We're going to find out very early on in the fight. Brad made a couple of fantastic points there. And if we just, for a quick second, have a look at the fighters that Calvin Kattar has had in his UFC tenure: Andre Fili, Burgos, Moicano, Lamas, Magomed Sharipov, Jeremy Stevens, Dan Ige, and then the battering to Holloway, right? None of those are easy fights. All of them, not all of them, but predominantly a lot of them are guys that strike very, very well and strike really, really hard, right? Now, he's come through some of those fantastically well, and some of them he's dropped. I think the point about not being finished and being a bit more of a wily veteran than Giga has fought before is a really big part of this fight, right? Does Calvin Kattar try and drag him a little bit late? Does Calvin Kattar try and rely on the chin? Is that his downfall? I don't know. But Giga Chikadze's never gone 5 rounds. He's been in a 5-round fight, but he finished it in the 3rd, right? So how does he look? We don't know. He's used to fighting kickboxing fights, 3-minute rounds. That's his background. He comes out, he fights at a pace that he's comfortable with, and he controls the range with that fight. If, as Denny alluded to earlier, if Kattar can come in here and upset the rhythm of Giga Chikadze and then take it long, I mean, who knows? It's completely uncharted territory. We do not know what's going to happen. The safe bet obviously is Giga Chikadze, and probably Giga Chikadze inside the distance because of the damage that Kattar's taken in his career. But if Kattar does have one more fight in that chin, it could absolutely be a Kattar fight. You know, it absolutely could.
For sure. I wouldn't have a big bet on Kattar in this fight, but maybe I'm sure he's the is he the underdog going into this fight? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
The answer on who you should bet for lies in Mr. Sean Sheehan's betting show. So go and consume that. And there you go.
Like
put the house on it. That's what Sean will tell you. Put the fucking house on it.
Yeah. Put 17 units on it.
I just want to talk maybe overall about the overall title picture at 145. You know, we had the official announcement today that it's going to be Volkanovski versus Korean Zombie. Little bit, I don't know what way I feel. I think it would have added a little extra spice into this fight if they had held off on that announcement. Maybe, you know, maybe we might thought Chikadze might have got in there with a really impressive performance and got that shot. But nonetheless, the fight was announced today. Sean Sheehan, what do you think about that fight? How do you think it's going to go?
Well, this is probably the most repeated rant in fucking MMA this week, because we talked about it this morning, and I have a Sherlock show probably coming out tonight or tomorrow talking about it as well. But I just, look, I'll say it again for the people who haven't seen any of them, and if you want to hear more about it, head on over to Sherlock. But I just feel like the matchmaking at 145 in the title picture for the last 6-7 years has just been abysmal. I was saying on the show we did today, right? If you think about it, so Conor McGregor won the title, right, and he disappeared off into fairyland, never to be seen again, right? Jose Aldo was the champion before that. What happens? Jose Aldo comes back and he fights Frankie Edgar, who he'd already beaten. Then Max Holloway comes, so we have some new blood, absolutely fantastic. Who does he, he beats Jose Aldo. Who does he fight again? Jose Aldo, right? Okay, we have some new blood, great. Brian Ortega, right? Loses, fair enough. Who gets the next fight? Frankie Edgar, right? Then what happens? Some new blood again, a little bit of new blood. Volkanovski, who does he fight? Brian Ortega, and he fights, who does he fight? Max Holloway again. And now we're going to get Max Holloway again. It's like, it feels like we've had little bits and little bits of new blood over the last 5 years, but fucking lads have come and gone. Mirsad Bektic has come and gone, had a whole career, and he's still waiting for a fucking title shot. Zabit Nurmagomedov Sharapov, Calvin Cade, or fucking Chikadze. Give these lads a chance. Get them in there. Get them ready. And it's not even just giving them the title shot. Like someone like a Chikadze, as you made the point there, Ian, why didn't they just wait until Monday to announce this fight? Imagine if Giga goes out there and fucking head kicks him in round 1 and knocks Kattar straight out, something Max Holloway couldn't do for 5 rounds. Imagine how great that'd be. It's not like, the Korean Zombie, great fighter. Everyone here loves him, without a shadow of a doubt. I know I speak for everyone. It's not like he's Leon Edwards, who's won fucking 8 in a row, or Tony Ferguson back before, who's won 10 in a row or something. He's not deserving of a title shot right now. I'd love to see him get a title shot. It'd be great, whatever. But I think Chikadze has won 8 in a row now. Imagine a first round head kick KO or a body kick KO or just a dominating win, and you get him right in there into that title shot after that. This new guy, who everyone thinks could be the next guy. It baffles me why they wouldn't give someone the opportunity to do that. The Korean Zombie can get his shot after that. Max Holloway can get his shot after that, whoever it might be. But come on. It's senseless to me, and it really annoys me. And I must go on that, so enjoy everyone.
Nice one, Shawnee. Thanks very much for joining us there. I kind of would tend to agree with Sean there. I think a little bit of fresh blood in the 145-pound division is something that we would all like to see. I mean, does the Korean Zombie fight do anything for you, Brad? I think it's probably going to be a pretty straightforward win for Alex Volkanovski.
I am a Korean Zombie super fan, so I'm going to have to disagree with you on moral principles there. I love the guy. You think back 10 years when he fought Leonard Garcia in WEC. I got so many of my friends into MMA by watching that fight. I've just always had a thing for him, and I think if you enjoy fighting, you can't really not enjoy watching this guy. So seeing him get his shot is cool. Obviously, there's an argument for the UFC waiting to see what happens with the fight this weekend. But, from a promotional point of view, it's not just as easy as waiting a few days. A week is a long time in promoting an MMA event. You need to book a building, and that's costing, 5-6 figures sometimes to get that building booked. And you have to have that done in a certain amount of time. And it genuinely can come down to days. You've got to get hotels booked. You've got to get the logistics done. It could have been a simple fact that the UFC cannot afford to wait until after this fight. Giga Chikadze gets a win in the first 30 seconds by head kick knockout and breaks a bone in his foot and has a 6-month medical suspension. Then where are we? Then we're stuck. So I kind of understand where the UFC have gone with this. Again, like I said earlier on, we're in the content age. So, it doesn't necessarily have to be a guy who's on a 10-fight win streak that gets the title fight. Korean Zombie's coming off a good fight against a solid gatekeeper. He's a well-known name. And I think looking forward, we're going to see a lot more of these kind of fights. It's not going to be like the John Fitch versus GSP situation where a guy's beaten everyone and he gets the opportunity. It's going to be whoever's ready on the month the UFC need them. But look, I don't have an issue with this fight. I think the Korean Zombie will probably lose, but I think he'll make a fun fight of it. And if he wins, the division's turned on its head, and that's what we love about MMA, right? Anything can happen. We saw that Korean Zombie fight where he smashed Rodriguez and then got that ludicrous reverse upside down elbow in the last second of the fight, the last blow of the fight, and then the fight's written off basically. So I mean, I would just love to see the Korean Zombie pull something off purely for the chaos factor. Don't think he will, but that's what makes it entertaining, right?
100%. I would have to say, like, I'm a big Korean Zombie fan too, and he guarantees entertainment every time that he steps in there. And we'll probably talk about that fight a little bit more down the line as well when it does actually happen. I want to talk a little bit about the flyweight fight on this current card this weekend. Fight between Brandon Royval and Rodrigo Bontorin. I think this is a great fight. I'm really looking forward to it. I think, the flyweight division has really got a resurgence in the last year or so. We have the trilogy fight coming up between Figueiredo and Moreno. It's going to be a great fight too. I mean, this fight between Royval is coming off 2 losses to Moreno, the champion, to Pantoja in his last fight. Bontorin's coming off a good win against Matt Schnell. Go to Harry Powell first. How do you see this fight going down, Harry? And who do you think is going to probably take it?
I see it go down with a lot of chaos, Something that I enjoy a lot about Brandon Royval fights, when his shoulders and arms stay in the right positions, is that he is somebody that brings chaos, right? He's obviously extremely good in the scrambles. He's very comfortable on the ground, whether that be on top or on the bottom. We haven't really seen Bontorin be forced into those mad scrambles. We haven't seen Bontorin be forced into wild exchanges in the way that Brandon Royval will bring those. So I think that is a really interesting thing for me. The other thing that's interesting is both of these guys had a little bit of trial by fire in their UFC debuts, right? Obviously, Bibolatov was a good win for Bontorin. Rolian Paiva is whatever it is, right? He's a solid enough fighter. But then you go straight to Ray Borg and Kai Kara France, right? Huge steps up for Bontorin. And for, why have I forgotten his name? For Brandon Royval, like, you're right in against Tim Elliott, who I am a big fan of just because he's so crazy. And then we have a Kai Kara France. And then again, we're trial by fire, right? So both of these guys have been thrown into that flyweight division. And what I'm really interested, and I talk about this all the time, I feel like a broken record, is how the rhythm of the fight will play out. Will Bontorin be able to stay on the outside and control the exchanges? Will he be able to gain the respect of Royval with his strikes? Will he be able to stop the mad exchanges and the clinch situations and the takedowns? If he is, we're in for a really interesting fight, because Royval on the feet hasn't looked as fantastic as he can look on the ground. But the question is, can he do that, right? Mm-hmm. If we're going for picks early, I know this is something that between me and you, Ian, we don't do often, but I think Brandon Royval is the pick here.
Interesting enough. I would tend to disagree with that a little bit. And looking at Bontorin's last fight against Matt Schnell, something that really stood out to me is, and the big question is what you were correct, Harry. The big question is can Royval implement his game plan here? Because I don't think that he's going to want to stand and bang with Bontorin. And the reason why I think that is because I feel that Bontorin really sits down on his shots. He landed some heavy shots against Matt Schnell. And I just think the way fights are being scored right now, the landing those big heavy shots, causing that damage, is going to get the fight scored in your direction. And I think that's what Bontorin does really well, especially in the flyweight division, when guys aren't really known that much for their power. But he does land big shots. He can hurt his opponents. And if he does hurt his opponents, or even if he does land those shots, I think that, that's good on the judges' scorecards, causing that damage. You think that, like, more so, especially in the flyweight division and maybe across all the other divisions, Brad, do you think that that's important aspect for fighters to kind of take into account when they are fighting a fight, rather than going for the maybe tippy-tappy shots, to really sit down on your punches and really cause those damage in shots? I think it's something that Bontorin does quite well. Do you see him doing that in this fight?
Yeah, I mean, just generally on that topic, obviously, we're at a stage now with MMA judging where a lot of people are understanding it a lot more, and a lot of people are understanding how the fights are scored, and also the judges are being encouraged to score that damage more than perhaps they did 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and those big fight ending shots are what they're looking for. We've seen many great flyweight fights. I was talking on Twitter earlier today about Mawaru Yamaguchi, one of the best flyweights of all time, who many people probably never heard of, and he was the best tippy-tappy fighter out there. But now they're looking for those big fight-changing moments. So it could all come down to that. And I think the key thing as well about the flyweight division in the UFC at the moment is, we look back a couple of years, Dana White was ready to bin it off, right? He was cutting everyone, stripping the division down. It's coming back now. We've got these guys in there. We've got a new champ, Figueiredo, still in challenger position, and they're signing some really, really good prospects. Even looking at just the UK side of things, Makayev and Jake Hadley. These guys potentially are within a year of a title fight. I don't think you could complain. If Muhammad Makayev wins 3 fights next year, I don't think you could complain about him getting a title shot in January. That's the kind of situation that the flyweight division is in. So for me, every fight in the flyweight division right now perhaps counts for 2 in the lightweight division or 3 in the welterweight division. So for these guys to come out there and throw those big shots and really put their foot down on the gas and go hell for leather, I think we're going to see some really exciting flyweight fights this year. And I think this is going to be the first one.
100%. I could not agree more. Like it's killer's row in the flyweight division right now. Sean Denny, do you see any of these guys, Bontorin or Royval? Do you think that they have what it takes maybe to put a run together and get themselves a title shot in the next year or so?
Yeah, well, why not? For me, that division is probably the most even in the entire company. So I think both these guys' records show that they're 3-2. Bontorin is 3-2. You've got Royval, he's 2-2. Just make sure I'm on the right fight. Yeah, 2-2. Yeah, so they're very similarly experienced. They've similar UFC records, similar amount of fights in general in MMA. They're both 29, which is about peak age for flyweight before you start slowing down. Their skill levels are quite high. Royval obviously is a very elite submission artist. Bontorin's a bit more all-rounded and is a heavier hitter. But these flyweight fights are usually decided on very little. So if you can just improve that 1% and just be that 1% above everybody else, you can put 2 or 3 together. And as you say, 2 or 3 wins, you're in that title frame quite easily. And flyweights are active. They're very active, and there's lots of opportunities.
100%. Before we'll move on to, I guess, the rest of the card, something that we alluded to earlier on is something that Thomas is after bringing up again, about the weakness of the card, and especially the first fight of the night, which we probably won't go into too much. But overall, we'll talk about the rest of the card now, maybe not in too much detail. I know, Brad, you had a couple of thoughts on the heavyweight fight in the main event, on the main card between Chase Sherman and Jake Collier. What's your thoughts on that fight in particular?
Well, we talked about this earlier offline. We have a saying here on the UK MMA scene: there's no such thing as a heavyweight, there's just fat middleweights. And I speak as one of those myself right now. I'm about 20 pounds over what I should be. But my God, Jake Collier embodies the fat middleweight, heavyweight body type. And look, it's worked out really well for him sometimes, because he can get on the inside on guys. He can throw those short shots, the short hooks and uppercuts. But it's also been the bane of him sometimes. And I think it's going to be the bane of him with Chase Sherman here on Saturday night. Sherman is a heavyweight size guy. He's a guy who's fought heavyweight bare knuckle boxing. He's got that range. He's got that reach. The problem with him is he's a bit sloppy as well. So I expect this to be a very messy, very dirty, very pub car park style fight. But look, when you talk about 2 unranked heavyweights in the middle of a fight night card, what more do you want? These 2 guys are going to go and sling everything they've got at each other. They're going to gas in the first 60 seconds. It's either going to be brilliant or hilarious. And what more do you want? It's not. This is not Fedor versus Big Nog. This is two guys who are going to punch the fuck out of each other. So I'm happy to see it. I hope they gas early. I hope they swing wild, and I hope it's going to be very entertaining.
I love it. I tend to agree with you there. Everybody loves a messy heavyweight fight because, anything could happen. One shot could finish it all. Harry, is there any other fights that are sticking out to you on this card that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I'm glad Sean's not here so I can talk about jiu-jitsu. I am interested in Caitlin Chikadze and Jennifer Maia, just because I think it would be really interesting if it goes to the ground. Maia is I believe she's a black belt, but Caitlin Chikadze is a brown belt under John Danaher. So, is well enough schooled. And okay, she doesn't show it as drastically and as well in her MMA fights as maybe she could. But I enjoy ground exchanges. And I think this one, if it does hit the mat, will be great. What will probably happen is it will be useless stand-up because neither of them will want to go to the ground and test those skills. But that's a fight that I am quite interested in. I have no interest in Chase Sherman, Jake Collier, actually, because of all the reasons that Brad's already said, actually.
Blocked, instantly blocked.
Please.
I mean, Jennifer Maia, she went the distance with Valentina Shevchenko. She's dusted herself off. She won
a round, remember? The world went crazy. She won a round.
Correct. You think, overall, Sean Denny in that 125-pound division, a division that has been dominated by Valentina Shevchenko and looks like it probably will be throughout the year 2022, although, you never know what might happen. Do you see either Chikadze or Maia maybe mounting up another challenge for Shevchenko, or do you see anybody else in the 125-pound division that might make a statement in 2022 and emerge as a new challenger? It's really hard to talk about this division because I think just Valentina Shevchenko is so head and shoulders above everybody else when it comes to her all-round game. And I mean, you're talking about challengers, but you're talking about challengers that are more than likely going to get a title shot and more than likely going to lose.
Yeah, I can see Chikadze in the blue corner in a championship fight, but I wouldn't call her a challenger. But I think with that division, Valentina, again, is a very active champion. She'll fight 4 times a year if she's fit. So you sort of have to keep putting the stake into the mincer to keep going. So they don't, they're sort of damned if they do, damned if they don't. You're relying on some of the younger people to sort of go in sort of the lower cards, maybe lose a couple along the way so they don't rush them. But as all these dominant champions show, you're very dominant until you're not. Joanna looked exactly like this when she was just whomping everybody, and then Rose Namajunas came along, and then all of a sudden every Joanna fight is very competitive. So Valentina is going to be the same. Somebody will eventually come along if she stays long enough and beat her. But I don't see at this stage, like Chikadze and Maia, they're 33. Chikadze, she is improving in her skills, but nowhere near as much as Shevchenko will. And Maia, she's got great experience, particularly in Invicta, fought some good fights in the UFC, but I consider them blue corner, not challengers, unfortunately.
Yeah, the names are going to be Erin Blanchfield and Casey O'Neill. Those are your
100%.
challenges.
And
it's not right now. It's not fucking right now. That's for sure.
And
but
just to piggyback off that point too, Harry, and something that Brad alluded to earlier on about the flyweight division, the men's flyweight division, is that 2 or 3 good wins in the women's 125-pound divisions could see you getting up there and could see you getting a title shot. And I just hope that doesn't happen for the likes of Casey O'Neill and Blanchfield, because I think what we need to do with them is slow build them and let them develop as fighters until they are ready to take that challenge. But they may not have that luxury because that division overall is quite weak at the minute. And I guess we can draw a line under that fight for now. Another fight I'd like to quickly talk about is UFC veteran Court McGee. He's still there. It's his 12th year inside the UFC. He fights Ramiz Brahimaj in the welterweight division. You might know Brahimaj, who nearly got his ear elbowed off by Max Griffin in a fight that happened. It was his last fight or the fight before that. He has 9 wins and 9 submissions. I think it's going to be difficult for him to come in here and submit somebody as experienced as Court McGee. I think, Court McGee has a good chance to pick up his second win on the bounce here. Does anybody have any thoughts on that fight, and how good it is for Court McGee to still be knocking around on 12 years later after making his UFC debut?
I think the longevity of Court McGee in the UFC is something that really has to be praised. This guy's been around since the days when the Ultimate Fighter was good, and people actually enjoyed it and watched it. And if you look into his story as well, the guy obviously had some serious issues outside the cage. I think he's spoken quite publicly about the fact that he was, he had some issues with drugs, and his health was at a pretty bad point. And as someone myself who's been in that exact same position, he's a guy I've always resonated with. And you kind of look out for those guys, guys like Matt Brown as well. And it's an inspiration to people like me, and I'm sure an inspiration to a lot of other people as well. That you can go through those bad times, you can come back and make something of yourself. And look, Court McGee's never going to be a UFC champion, right? But he's going to be a guy who can turn around to his kids and say, look, I fought the highest level for a number of years, and I was very competitive against some great guys. And look, he won his last fight, and there's no reason he can't win this one. If there's one word that describes Court McGee to me, it's grit. This guy has grit. If you beat him, it's not going to be easy, and you're not going to look great doing it. So always look forward to seeing Court McGee fight, and really looking forward to probably the only fight, to be completely honest, I'm looking forward to watching on the prelims.
100%. Very well said, Brad. And I mean, it's something that we might snuff at or not maybe talk about enough, is that, some guys are in the UFC and they might not make it up to the very highest level. But to say that you've been a UFC fighter for 12 years is a phenomenal achievement in my eyes as well. And you have to give Court McGee credit for that, for sure. Moving along, we briefly brush over a few more fights. We have to mention that Charles Rosa coming in at short notice here, on maybe 3 days notice, to take on TJ Brown after Gabriel Benitez was forced to pull out today. Another fight I'd like to mention is Viaslav Borschev. We've seen him in the Contender Series, unfortunately beating Chris Duncan, and he put on a phenomenal display in that fight. So I'm really excited. Yeah, he's a really good prospect, and he's coming into the lightweight division for his debut, and he's taking on Dakota Bush. Don't really know too much about Bush, being honest, but I'm really looking forward to seeing Borschev. Were you impressed, Harry, with his performance against Chris Duncan, who is not an easy guy to beat? A very, very good fighter, but Borschev really put on a show that night and really surprised me.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was going to be Chris Duncan's coming out party, if I'm honest. I thought this was the chance we were going to see him in the UFC. He was going to go in, pick up a good win. And obviously it didn't go that way at all. I thought Borschev looked fantastic. And in an already absolutely incredibly stacked 155 division, I'll be very interested to see where he is in 3 fights. Let's see what he can do. Let's see where he gets to. But yeah, he's a massive prospect. He's quite, let me just pull up. Yeah, 5-1. 5-1. So early in his MMA career, so many miles. He is 30, right? So the UFC may do that thing where they chuck him in this fight, he wins, they chuck him against, someone slightly out of the rankings, and then all the way we're off to the races. But, either way, like, a great addition to 155, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing what he can do.
100%.
I just want to hear the Slava Claus is coming to town song again.
100%. Just talking, we'll briefly talk about Brian Kelleher versus Karimov. Not so much about the fight, but more so about the fact that we're talking about a fighter that has had 30 plus fights in Brian Kelleher, who's coming in against Karimov. I'm butchering his name. I'm sorry about that, but he's coming in Karimov that's only had 11 fights. I mean, it's a massive gap in experience. We've seen that a lot of times in the UFC. I mean, I know they're trying to push on these young fighters. But I mean, I don't know how I feel about that. A guy who has 30 plus fights coming in against a guy with 11 fights. It'll be interesting to see how they match up in there. But after that, unless anybody else has anything to add about that fight or anything else, I think we might.
Just on that one, Sean Sheehan's bold predictions for the year. One of them is that Irish fighters will remain unbeaten.
Right.
Are we counting Brian Kelleher?
Fuck's sake.
I think we had a brief discussion on the group there in the Patreon group, and we came to the conclusion that no, it doesn't count, and that would probably work in Sean Sheehan's favour, to be honest.
If he holds an Irish passport, would that not count? Devil's advocate.
It
I
might
thought you
count.
had to
It
live
might
in
count.
Ireland, right?
Yeah, well, we're after claiming more fighters now than we have had breakfasts over the last couple of years, because it's been a barren spell for Irish MMA inside the UFC. Hopefully this year will be a little bit better. Ian Gary, if McGregor comes back, and maybe a few more that might get signed along the way as well. But I think we'll wrap up the UFC talk for now, and I would like to talk maybe for a couple of minutes about the upcoming KSW card, which is going on again this Saturday night. I'd be amiss if I didn't ask Sean Denny to give us a quick breakdown on that card. Is there any major fights on that card that you're looking forward to in particular, Sean?
Yeah, the two title fights are fantastic matchups, particularly the lightweight title fight. You got Marian Golden Boy Zhukovsky. He is fighting the legend Boris Mankovsky, who was the ex-middleweight champion. So Zhukovsky fights out at WCA in Warsaw, same team as Jan Bohovic, Bartosz Fabinski, a few others. But it's a very strong gym. Zhukovsky won the belt after Gamrot vacated, and he's looked sensational since. His striking has been on point. He's very accurate. He's using his grappling very well. He's a very good wrestler. He's got very good jiu-jitsu, and he's a finisher. But Mankovsky is Gamrot's main training partner. So Gamrot is the last person to beat Zhukovsky. So Mankovsky is a very accurate boxer himself, but he's really sort of active. He'll try and force his own offensive wrestling on him, and he's got a BJJ black belt as well. So they're pretty evenly matched. So that's going to be an absolute barn burner. Other fights of note, the light heavyweight title fight, Tomas Snarkum. He's got his biggest test to date against, I'm just going to read out his name, Chuzagayev. I've probably butchered that one.
Rather you than me on that one.
Chizagayev.
Chizagayev. So Narkun has been absolute dominant in that division. He's been murking people left, right, and center. He moved up to heavyweight a couple of times to fight Phil DeFries, but to be honest, he's way too small for that type of thing. But he was going looking for challenges. But Narkun, very good jiu-jitsu, great triangles. He's got great guillotines. He's good everywhere in the submissions, and he's got knockout power on the feet. Great in the clinch with his knees. But this is definitely his toughest fight. He's fighting against like a Pancration style, tough kickboxer with leg kicks, who can grapple as well. So this is a very game opponent. Elsewhere on the card, like a third fight from last will be Michał Materla. He left KSW a little while ago to form his own promotion called the EFM Show. Unfortunately, that's fallen by the wayside, so he's back with KSW. So the legend returns there, but he is fighting against
Jason Radcliffe.
Yeah.
Jason Radcliffe, who I like Jason Radcliffe because he's a very aggressive fighter. He'll take chances. He's going to come in. He's not going to be scared of Materla. Materla is very good on the feet. Great. He's got a great uppercut. If it hits the ground, he's got great ground and pound. He's got submissions. If you have a sloppy takedown, he's got an unbelievable guillotine. Jason Radcliffe, though, is going to stand with him without a doubt. He's going to take one to give one. He takes a risk, and if he catches you, not many people survive it.
Brad, you've had an up close and personal look at Jason Radcliffe. Of course, he was defeated by James Webb inside the Cage Warriors cage, as well as Donovan Desme, who is also on the card tonight. I mean, any thoughts on both of those fighters and the fights that they're in on KSW on Saturday night?
Well, particularly on Donovan, he's a personal favourite of mine. I think the guy's absolutely tough as nails. Him taking that fight against Jack Grant for the Cage Warriors lightweight title on short notice, and I mean that's one of the closest fights in Cage Warriors history. And I think Donovan was very upset he didn't win that night. I think he had a good shout for winning, and I think Jack did as well. I think neither guy could have been disappointed with their performances, and that speaks to the level that Donovan's at. He had a well fought but clear loss last time out on KSW in my eyes, so he's got a lot to prove here. So I think that's going to be an interesting fight. Jason Radcliffe, I think he's going to struggle in this one. To be completely honest, he's going up against a very, very tough opponent. I'm also looking forward to the Nicholas Backstrom fight. He's a really entertaining guy. We've not seen a big show in a while, so always look forward to Backstrom fighting. But just to go back to Tomas Snarkum for a second, as Sean said, this is a guy who was dominating at light heavyweight. John Jones style dominating in terms of what he was doing in KSW, and then stepped up to heavyweight to fight Phil DeFries. And, for me, that's the equivalent of John Jones fighting an Ngannou. This is not a light heavyweight fighting a 215-pound, 220-pound heavyweight like Randy Couture was. This is the equivalent of a UFC lightweight champion stepping up to fight a light heavyweight champion. We don't see that a lot in the sport. And this guy did that twice. So the balls on this guy are absolutely phenomenal. I don't see anyone beating him at light heavyweight, and I look forward to this fight greatly.
100%. Thanks very much for that, Brad. It was great. I mean, keeping on kind of the Cage Warriors side of things, it was a very, very successful year for Cage Warriors overall in 2021. They jumped through massive hoops to try and get some great shows down. Credit to yourself, Brad, for doing a great job, and you were a very worthy winner of the Commentator of the Year. Credit to the Cage Warriors team, the backroom team, everybody else. And I'm expecting a very big 2022 for Cage Warriors. Is there anything in particular that you're looking forward to in the upcoming year for the promotion?
I mean, like you mentioned, mate, and I just want to take a minute to say the guys who work behind the scenes on Cage Warriors are the guys who do the real work. I am very, very lucky in that I get to turn up during the pandemic period once every 3 months for 3 nights, and I get to sit next to Dan Hardy and Dan Strauss, and I get to watch great fights, and I get to talk shit about them. And who wouldn't want to do that? But there's guys behind the scenes, Ian Dean, Graham Boylan, and a team so big that I wouldn't even want to start mentioning names because I wouldn't want to miss anyone out. The work those guys have done, the stuff that you guys don't know. I mean, you guys have heard all the public stuff about the hotels being requisitioned by the UK government and having to move the entire fighter and staff base to different hotels on 4 days' notice, and having to move the entire event from London to Manchester at the beginning of the pandemic. That's just the stuff you guys know about. The stuff behind the scenes has been even more insane, and I just don't think the Cage Warriors team get the credit they deserve. So I want to take this opportunity to just thank those guys so much for letting fighters, commentators, referees, and everyone else do what we've been able to do over this past 2 years. It's been nuts. We're very much looking forward to some normality over the next year. As for what I'm looking forward to, I'm really looking forward to watching the California shows because I've been with Cage Warriors for 10 years now and I've only missed 2 shows. So it's very nice for me to be able to sit back in my bed or on my couch and watch a show live from California and not have to do the work, which is great. But also, if you look at Graham Boylan's Twitter, he said that this is going to be the busiest year in Cage Warriors history. I think the most shows we've done in the year before is 18. So, you may be looking at 18, 19 shows this year. And a new country on the calendar as well, which my money says it will be France. Got Morgan Charrière, Jati Milan, the new middleweight champion. And of course, MMA has just been made legal in France. So I imagine you're going to see a lot of Cage Warriors shows from a lot of different places. Look at the rosters at the moment, man. Of course, we've got this huge Paul Hughes-Vicenic fight coming up. You've got the Figlaks, you've got the Hardwicks, you've got Matt Bonner, perhaps looking to drop down to welterweight and make a title run. You've got Christian Duncan looking to get past what happened to him on the Contender Series and get back into UFC contention, perhaps. It's going to be a fun year, I think, my friends.
I can't wait for it already. I mean, like one of the highlights of my year was getting to tune in and watch those trilogy cards last year. We might not get those trilogy cards this year, but we definitely are going to get some fantastic fights, some fantastic cards as always. Cage Warriors are an organization and promotion that like to do things right, and you can see that with every broadcast. I mean, the work that you and the guys do behind the desk, and like you said, everybody behind the scenes is just sensational, and it's a credit to yourselves. It's a credit to Cage Warriors and Graham and Ian Dean for putting on these fantastic fights for us, and it's a pleasure for me to be watching them. And some added extra Irish interest for us with Paul Hughes fight coming up. Joe McColgan will be defending his title, I'm sure, in the coming months as well. There's going to be plenty to talk about, and I for one can't wait.
The Shelley twins as well, both just signed exclusive deals with Cage Warriors, I believe. So
absolutely,
look out for those two guys.
I'll be
And
having
Reece McKee.
I'll be having the Shelley brothers on next Monday for a conversation to talk about that, and looking forward to talking to them. Two phenomenal, talented guys coming from a Taekwondo background, and they're going to be putting some fantastic fights, and I really can't wait to see it. I think we're going to wrap it up at that, guys. Thanks so much to everybody for joining me today. Go and follow all the guys on Twitter. Follow Harry Powell at BJJ _Harry Powell. I always get that one wrong. Follow Sean Denny at Denny Rants. Go and follow Brad Wharton at MMA Brad 48, all on Twitter. I want to thank you all for joining me tonight. Thanks to everybody for listening. Thanks to everybody for tuning into YouTube. Go over and check out SevereMMA. Got the UFC preview coming up. We got lots of exciting things coming up as well. Head over to our Patreon, sign up there. We got some great shows. Harry has the Speaker's Corner there, fantastic show with Sean Sheehan. Myself and Sean will be doing the Contender. We'll be doing the Chase and Pack. There's lots of stuff over on the Patreon. Come and support us. We could use all the help that we need. It's very important to support independent MMA. We do try to do our best and cover the sport in the right way. All the guys are the same. Thank you very much, Brad, for taking the time to join us tonight. It was an absolute pleasure to be on with you, bringing the heat all the time, and I hope that you'll accept another invite down the line as well to talk some more fights. It's always a pleasure.
Anytime, my friends, anytime.
Excellent. Go and follow the guys over on Twitter, and finally head on over to eatallreal.com, all real nutrition bars. Enter the code word SevereMMA, get 15% off, and enjoy the best protein bars on the market. Support Irish products, and credit to Niall Harty. He's doing some fantastic things. The bars are all over the place right now. They're doing some fantastic work. They're heading over stateside. It's a pleasure to be have those guys as our sponsors. The bars are delicious. We've got a wide range of flavors. So head on over there, enter the code word SevereMMA, get yourself 15% off. Thank you everybody for joining us tonight to break down the first card of the year. We will be back next week to break down the next upcoming pay-per-view card, which is a monster card. It's a card that has more potential to be more insane than a Britney Spears Instagram post. Francis Ngannou versus Cyril Gane. Unbelievable card. We'll be here next week to break that down, and I will talk to you all then.